Welcome to the Common Gavel, brought to you by the Grand Lodge of Maryland. The Common Gavel features Masonic stories and news from across the state of Maryland. Now from the Grand Lodge of Maryland, here's your host, Director of Communications, Tom Foster.
Welcome to the Common Gavel Podcast, the podcast all about the Maryland Masonic family. I hope everyone has recovered from what was really a great but very busy installation season. The Grand Master and his line traveled from one end of the state to the other and installed over 20 worshipful masters. And I hope you got a chance to meet the great Grand Line. Speaking of the Grand Master, as always, we begin the show with a few words from our most worshipful Grand Master, Gus Vorvalis.
Time now for the Grand Master's message with the Grand Master of Masons in Maryland, Brother Gus Vorvalis.
The installation season is complete, and the new Masonic year has begun. The worshipful masters who are presiding over our lodges are more qualified to lead than ever before. The men who attended the Lodge Leadership Program in October were taught how to create a budget for their respective lodges and to put their lodges on a solid financial footing. They were taught skills that would increase membership in our lodges and retain and mentor our current members. How to be a leader and motivate the officers and brothers of a lodge was a very important segment of this program. Making their lodges operate smoothly and efficiently was the goal of the lodge management portion of the program. As you can see, there are many aspects to being a worshipful master of a Blue Lodge. It is not just the ability to confer the 3 degrees of ancient craft masonry and pass the Masonic law exam. The 2017 Lodge Leadership Program will be presented on 2 days, March 18th and October 21st. In March, 4 segments of the course will be presented: Lodge Management, Finance, Leadership, and Membership. The first sections of this course will enable you to create a business plan for your lodge. The instructors will show you how to put a business plan together so that it can be presented to them in October. In October, the final segments of the course will be presented. They will consist of the responsibilities and prerogatives of the worshipful master and lodge communications. At that session also, each student will submit the business plan that they have created for their year in office. The instructors will be able to critique the plan and offer any suggestions that they may have for improvement. Both seminars will be held at the Grand Lodge. Coffee and donuts will be served at 8:30 and the program will begin at 9 a.m. Lunch will be served at noon and the day will conclude about 5 p.m. The cost for the entire program is $75. This will cover the cost of the materials and lunch for both days. This course is required of all senior and junior wardens and any past masters that are going into the East in 2018. I urge you to attend this worthwhile program. It will make you better prepared to lead your lodge. Regional meetings will begin on February 4th at the Grand Lodge and continue on February 11th at Cambridge Lodge in Cambridge, on February 25th at Centennial Lodge in Upper Marlboro, and on March the 4th at Allegan Shrine in Cumberland. Coffee and donuts will be served at 8:30 with lunch immediately following the meeting. Worshipful masters, senior and junior wardens, secretaries and treasurers, and chairmen of your membership committee are required to attend at least one meeting. Breakout sessions for Grand Inspectors, Secretaries, and Membership Chairmen will take place after the formal presentations. Please attend at least one of these meetings, as much valuable information will be presented. Over the past several months, the Grand Lodge has been active in its attempts to communicate better with the craft and the public in general. The new Freemasons of Maryland Facebook page was launched. This page is open to the public. Anyone can view this page. However, one must be approved in order to post anything. In a 2-week period, the Grand Lodge received 165 inquiries about membership on this site. These inquiries were forwarded to the appropriate lodges for follow-up. I hope that the membership chairman made contact with these men. It is up to the brethren in the lodges to seal the deal when it comes to membership. On January 17th, an open installation of officers was conducted at Jephthah Lodge. What was unique about this installation that it was presented live on our Freemasons of Maryland Facebook page. On that evening, there were over 12,000 viewers that witnessed parts of the ceremony. There were viewers from all over the United States as well as the world. Masons from Romania, Australia, Scotland, Wales, England, India, and many other countries viewed this public installation. The comments that were received were overwhelmingly positive. Masons and non-Masons were asking questions about the fraternity. This is the wave of the future. We must show the world outside our doors that we are open to all good men in our society. My brothers, as I have mentioned previously, we are a fraternity of men, but we are a family organization. I hope that you will include your families in all of the public activities of the Grand Lodge and the local lodges. Now may the Supreme Architect of the universe bless you and keep you and our entire Masonic family as we spread the light of Freemasonry throughout this great nation.
And now, Right Worshipful Deputy Grand Master, Brother Richard Nagel.
The marathon that we began on January 3rd has finally ended. All the lodge installations are complete, and the new Worshipful Masters can begin putting their plans into action. To assist with this is the Membership Manager, to which all Maryland Masons have access. It contains many valuable resources and is a great way to share and learn about happenings around the state. To enter the system, you need to go to glmd.org and go to the member portal. For first-time users, you need your name, lodge number, and membership number from your dues card. Once in it will prompt you to make changes for future access. When you first enter, make sure the information listed is correct and update is needed. You can also add a photo of yourself to make it more personal. The information displayed on the home page will be from your home lodge and those within 25 miles of that location. This includes meetings, social functions, and general announcements from neighboring lodges. The blue tabs on your home page are where all the information you will need as a member in Maryland. The candidate, entered apprentice, and fellowcraft have limited materials. The Master Mason portal is where most of the documents are housed. Items such as the Lewis and Heritage Jewel applications, petitions for membership, a mentoring guide, strategies for membership development and retention, and the Grand Lodge Constitution can be found in this section. The Lodge Locator will allow you to find information about brothers and events from a specific lodge anywhere in the state. The Business Directory is a great way to advertise to other members of the craft. Many are always looking for construction work for their homes, insurance or legal advice, and even PR and marketing for a special event. This is a great way to have your needs met by someone you know you can trust. The Maryland Masonic Academy is also found in this system. Once a Master Mason has stood his third-degree proficiency, the portal becomes available for an online educational enrichment of our fraternity. The Fellow of the Craft recounts the first 3 degrees. Upon completion, the pillars of the craft will open to allow a more in-depth look into the Constitution, ritual, public ceremonies, and various literatures published on Freemasonry. The final component is a research presentation to be made in lodge or in one of our research lodges. Once these are complete and you attain the position of Worshipful Master of your lodge, you are eligible for membership in the King Solomon Society. I hope everyone takes advantage of the membership system. Those listening to this podcast need to share it with others in your lodge. This will lead to a more informed craft and a meaningful Masonic experience.
This is the Common Gavel Podcast.
As a podcast listener, you're certainly up on the latest in terms of social media, right? If not, you should know that the Freemasons of Maryland can now be found on Instagram and Twitter. And our Facebook page is booming. As Grandmaster mentioned, we had thousands of people tuning in live from all over the world. One of our overseas brothers who saw the feed was Brother Alan Cowell from the United Kingdom. He's a past provincial Grand Pursuivant of Hadrian Lodge number 1970 in England. Brother Alan, you watched the ritual online?
Yeah, I watched them being installed. I watched the full 2 hours. I was fascinated.
So what did you think about our installation ritual?
The ritual is very, very similar to some English rituals. There are several kinds over here, but it's very similar to what I would see in my lodge.
So of the 40,000 people who watched, only a handful were truly bothered by it being online. So what were your thoughts on the ceremony being out there?
There was nothing placed online that anybody couldn't find on the internet anyway. And there were no signs or secrets given away. It was simply the appointment of officers.
In your opinion, how important to Freemasonry would you say social media is at this point?
Very much so. Most lodges now, most halls, will have some sort of Facebook presence or some sort of Twitter presence. A Google search for South Shields Freemasons will bring up, certainly in this country, brings up our website straight away. It's usually the number 1 hit. So it's very, very important to be using social media.
So you're a member of the United Grand Lodge of England?
Yes, under the United Grand Lodge of England, yeah.
You're celebrating 300 years of masonry this year in England. What's the Grand Lodge have planned?
But first of all, the fundraising as usual. Every lodge is being given a target to achieve depending upon numbers in the lodge. And then there's to be, towards the end of the year, there's to be a huge dinner dance ball at the Grand Lodge building in London itself.
Well, here in the States, we're very focused on bringing in new men, and I know you are as well. What's happening over there to attract new members?
Grand Lodge are opening up. We have what's called openness in the community now. Lodge halls can be used for private functions, whereas once they were kept quiet. But very much they're reaching out for newer members. The fact of the truth is that in England, lodge members are dying quicker than lodge members are joining.
You still don't ask men to join, and neither do we. We simply tell them they need to ask to be one, ask one. How's that handled in England?
Very similar. What we would say perhaps is knocking the shall be open, something like that, to anybody who had in England. But lodges also hold open nights, what we call a gavel night, where if you haven't got a candidate to go through, you might invite non-Masons and their wives to come and have a look, and then somebody would do maybe a short lecture upstairs, and then they'd sit and have dinner afterwards as we would normally in the hotel. So there are ways of actively seeking members without going out and straightforward asking.
So it seems like the UGLE is on the same page with all of us here in North America.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. For too long we were in the dark and kept very secretive about ourselves. Now this openness in the community, people, how they don't see us, I don't know, because every building has a square and compass on the outside, so it's not like we're trying to keep totally quiet. But there's very much a feeling from the United Grand Lodge of England of a more openness and a more willingness to bring people in using the normal ways.
Brother Alan, thank you for your thoughts and for your brotherhood from so far away. And if you ever find yourself in the States, you've certainly got friends here in Maryland.
A podcast all about the Maryland Masonic family. This is the Common Gavel Podcast.
More light in Masonry, that's the goal of every Freemason. We've got an extraordinary educational program available at the members portal. Just sign in at glmd.org for more information. And if you haven't registered yet, it's easy. All you need is your name and your membership number that's found right on your dues card. In the meantime, here's Brother Dave Sandy. He joins us on the podcast for an educational segment called Further Light.
Today's broadcast examines a familiar title, recognizable to Masons and heard regularly in our lodges. That title is Past Master. The idea for this topic came from a request by Worshipful Master Bob Candler of Charity Lodge number 134. Let's begin by defining the title as one given to a brother who has been duly elected and installed as Worshipful Master of a regular lodge and has served one full term. There is an exception to this definition, and it pertains to the Worshipful Master of a lodge that ceases to exist by merger. He becomes a past master regardless of the length of time served. Past masters have no rights in the subordinate lodges which are not possessed in common with all other brethren. The prerequisite to becoming a past master is to become a worshipful master, and those requirements are, number 1, demonstrate proficiency in conferring all 3 decrees before a deputy grand lecturer. Also, to pass an examination in Masonic law. They must also receive the Past Master's degree from a Past Master's Association. They must certify to the reading of Article 16 of the Grand Lodge Constitution. And finally, they must be elected by their lodge. While the Past Masters have no extra rights, there are privileges that are afforded to them. Past Masters are permanent members of Grand Lodge. Some Grand Lodge committees require all or some members to be Past Masters. Collectively, with the other Past Masters of their lodge, they have one vote in Grand Lodge. Upon invitation or with the permission of the presiding officer, they may preside in the East, confer the 3 degrees, and conduct a memorial or burial service. They may be elected Worshipful Master of a lodge, and they may install an incoming Worshipful Master also. Traditionally, lodges will present their Past Masters with an apron and jewel. In Maryland, the Past Master's apron and jewel usually depict the emblem of a Past Master, and it can vary in its design. Some designs for the Past Master emblem include the square, compasses, quadrant, and sun. Others do not include the square. Some jurisdictions use the quadrant-only design. In Maryland, however, we see a variety. There is at least one Maryland lodge that leaves out the quadrant. There are some other jurisdictions around the world the closest being Pennsylvania, who used the 47th problem of Euclid for their pastmaster emblem. The quadrant, known to some in the colloquial as the rocker, is an instrument used to measure angles up to 90 degrees. The quadrant shows at what angle the compasses are open. This seems fitting as a symbol for a pastmaster because it is by the compasses that a mason keeps himself within due bounds. And it is considered the role of the worshipful master to ensure that members of his lodge are making proper use of their moral compasses. By the quadrant, it is generally shown that the compasses are open to an angle of 60 degrees. This is significant because 60 degrees is the angle of an equilateral triangle. The equilateral triangle represents perfect balance, as all sides are of equal length, and the triangle appears the same from all directions. It therefore symbolizes how the man who wears this jewel has learned the lessons of masonry, lives a balanced life, and it also shows that the wearer has served equally in the south, the west, and the east. A sextant is a tool used in navigation. It uses a quadrant to measure altitude, determine one's location, and also to plot a course. It can be considered a symbol of the pastmaster's responsibility for plotting the course of his lodge during his term as worshipful master. It also symbolizes how he is capable of assisting in the navigation of the lodge should his successors ask for his assistance. The sun is used to represent how the wearer has observed the sun at its meridian height in the south, the setting in the west, and its rising in the east. The sun is a symbol of light, which in masonry is a symbol of knowledge. By it, there is the understanding that the wearer is a source of knowledge to his lodge. Topics such as this are discussed regularly at meetings of the Maryland Masonic Lodge of Research number 239. If this kind of Masonic experience appeals to you, consider attending one of the meetings and become a member. Until next time, keep your light shining brightly, my brothers, and as always, I thank you for your kind attention.
This is the Common Gavel Podcast.
In the last year or so, due to policy changes within certain groups, Boy Scout troops across the country have been finding themselves without a home. As usual, when there's a need in the community, Freemasons have stepped up and taken in many of these orphaned scout troops. But the connection between Freemasonry and Scouting is certainly not a new one. Masons have worked hand in hand with Scouts since the very beginning. Joining us to talk about it now is Robert King. He's a Master Mason and the Unit Commissioner for Troop 999 in Bel Air. Robert, give us a little history on Boy Scouts and Masons.
Yes, one of the original commissioners for Boy Scouts of America, Dan Beard, was a Mason from Ohio, out of Columbus, Ohio, and he was hired by Boy Scouts of America National when they were starting it up, and he wrote many of the initial Scout handbooks for the Boy Scouts of America.
Obviously, Masons are committed to our DeMolay chapters as well as our young ladies groups, Rainbow and Jobs. How do the Scouts fit into that picture?
I think all the youth organizations teach youth how to become better citizens and leaders for tomorrow. I don't see it as a competition. The different youth groups, DeMolay and Job's Daughters and Boy Scouts, their whole purpose is to build better people and start that foundation at a young age. And both of them do it in different ways. Boy Scouts focus more on the outdoor program.
So a young man could be in Scouts and DeMolay with no issue?
That would be the ideal. And also the girls that are Job's Daughter that are 14 and have completed 8th grade could also be part of the co-ed program of Boy Scouts of America Venturing Crew.
Most of us are certainly familiar with Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. Venturing Crew is new. And co-ed?
That's correct. And they get to lead the whole adventure, both the boys and the girls that are in the Venturing Crew, pick and choose and lead the adventure, and the adults that help them are just simply advisors.
So what made the Masons want to be involved with your troop, and how's it going so far?
It's going really great. We had When we presented it to the lodge, more than 80% of the men that were present raised their hand and said that they were in Scouts when they were younger. Then when we welcomed them on their first meeting night, we had probably about 20 to 25 members that showed up the first night on that Monday night to welcome them into the lodge. And we had a little social of hot dogs and some chips for them. And hopefully we'll be able to help support them going forward.
So the boys are outside the lodge right now building a fire. That is a sanctioned fire, correct?
Yeah, it's under adult supervision, so hopefully they don't burn the lodge down.
What are the boys looking forward to in the coming months that the Masons can be a part of?
Right now, we're trying to work that through with our representatives, but their big event that they always look forward to is summer camp. This troop has a younger set of boys, so they're not into the high adventures yet, but hopefully, some of the men will be able to step up and help mentor them in shooting sports and other climbing activities and things that interest teenage boys.
Are they building a dog sled right now?
Yeah, they're getting ready to do a Klondike, which is winter camping at a camp Rodney in Cecil County. It's a competition for their skills, and they also get to learn some winter survival skills.
Well, you enjoy the winter camping. I'll wait right here with some hot cocoa. Robert, thanks for your work and your service to our craft. Guys, if you know a scout troop that needs a home, or you know a lodge that would like to sponsor a troop, just shoot us an email at podcast@glmd.org.
If you have a friend who's interested in Maryland Masonry, make sure you tell him about the Common Gavel podcast.
If you've ever visited the library and museum, you'll notice immediately quite a number of portraits in the collection. Most of them are of past Grand Masters. Here to join us today is museum curator Edward Highmiller about a relatively new acquisition that involves portraits. Welcome, Edward. Tell us about this acquisition.
In December, we were presented with a series of portraits from a family who had inherited them from their father's estate. And the portraits had actually been hanging in the family's home in Roland Park since the early 20th century in the same location. And prior to that, they had hung in the family home on Madison Street. The oldest of the portraits is of William Wiegand, who was one of the engineers working for the Vulcan Iron Works here in Baltimore City, which supplied some of the iron for Fort Carroll in the city harbor here in Baltimore. And through his business associations, he ended up meeting and becoming friends with Robert E. Lee while Robert E. Lee was here working on building Fort Carroll. But he was also, in the case of William Wiegand, who the portrait's of, he was a member of Ben Franklin Lodge here in Baltimore. And in addition to receiving his portrait, we were very fortunate to receive his wife's portrait, which is officially the first portrait of a woman to come into the museum collection. So it's nice to have the ladies represented because, as we know, we wouldn't be here today if we didn't have the spouses' support and the family support of our members. And in the case of William Wiegand's wife, Louisa, she was very active. Again, these portraits are from the mid-19th century, so her activity is rather important because it helps document what the wives were doing before groups like the Eastern Star were founded. And it shows that the women were still very philanthropically endeavored. She was the founder of several organizations here in Maryland, including the Silver Cross Home at Port Deposit. Even though she's based in Baltimore, she still has other interests. Ironically, after the death of her husband, she ends up staying in a boarding house over in Reisterstown. So she ends up, unfortunately, passing away in Reisterstown.
Hey, I live there. That's not such a bad place.
No, it's not. But it shows that, people did get around more than we kind of give them credit for today.
Sure.
But after her death, the family settled, as I said, in a house in Roland Park, and the family portraits were moved there. And we were very fortunate the great-grandchildren decided to donate not only these portraits, but also other portraits of children, one of which is Henry Hazelhurst Wiegand, who was one of the founders of the Baltimore Museum of Art as well. And we're very fortunate to have that portrait. A series of other very wonderful items, including the family Bibles, which the oldest one is from 1803 and the newest one's from 1854.
Now, I understand that those who are friends of the museum got a more in-depth bit of information about these portraits. Why don't you talk about that?
The Friends of the Museum send out a quarterly newsletter to our members. The most recent issue featured an article strictly actually on those portraits and the full information on the biographies and history of them. So for those who are more historically inclined and like to get that information, the being members of the Friends of the Museum, that's one of the great benefits of it. You get to find out first what we get. And there's great new additions. There's always new editions of old things. So
how can someone become a friend of the museum?
To join the Friends of the Museum, it's a $50 membership, and you can go to our website at mdmasonicmuseum.org, or you can just go ahead and just write in to the Library Museum here at the Grand Lodge of Maryland. It's the same address, and just inquire that way, or you can email us. I should also mention that the museum has some of our special events coming up. On Saturday, March 18th, I'll be doing a talk at Clifton Mansion here in Baltimore City on Samuel Smith and his home Montebello, which was the neighboring property originally to Clifton Mansion. And after the talk, the visitors will be able to tour Clifton Mansion, and I should add, from the tower, you can actually see the Inner Harbor. So it's well worth the time to see the view. We also have on April 30th, which is a Sunday, at 1 p.m., we are returning to the Garrett Jacobs Mansion for both of these events. It's $5 for Friends of the Museum, and for those who are not Friends of the Museum, they're $15 each. So hopefully you'll be able to join us.
Shriners, Scottish Rite, York Rite, Blue Lodge, all a part of the Common Gavel podcast.
Last month, we started a new game called Tom's Trivia, and it was a little Masonic math problem. Take the number of the Grand Master's home lodge and add the number of steps leading to the outer chamber of King Solomon's middle chamber. The answer is 227. From all the answers we got, we chose one at random, and that winner is Brother Chris Ricci from Mount Ararat Lodge number 44, and he's going to get a Grand Lodge ball hat for his efforts. Here's this month's question. In the Maryland Masonic Museum, we have a keystone from the archway of the old Grand Lodge building that was demolished in the late 1800s. That stone had been lost for over 100 years. Where was it found? Here's a hint. If you're a fan of our Facebook page, you may have seen a video all about this keystone. So send your answer to podcast@glmd.org, and you could win a great Maryland Masonic prize. We don't pick a winner until just before the next show comes out, so if you're a little late on listening, don't worry. You still have a shot at being a big winner. That's going to wrap up another edition of the Common Gavel podcast. For producer Maynard Edwards, I've been your host, Tom Foster. Make it a great month in Maryland Masonry.
If you're interested in becoming a Freemason, or you have questions or comments about the Common Gavel podcast, email us. That address is podcast@glmd.org, or visit mdmasons.org. The Common Gavel podcast is produced by Maynard Edwards in association with the Grand Lodge of Maryland. Your host has been Tom Foster, and I'm your announcer, Bob Chase.